All right. Hello, everyone. I am Kelsey Comacher. I am a licensed massage therapist and then also a certified holistic health practitioner here at Bamboo Spa and Wellness Center. Today, I'm going to be doing a short presentation and kind of explanation of scar release therapy. This is one of the many therapies that we offer here at Bamboo, and you might hear of us incorporating it in with a massage or even as a standalone treatment as well. So here's just a little overview of what we'll be discussing today. We're going to first start off with what is scar release therapy and then talk a little bit about the devices we use called the Dolphin NeuroStims. We'll go into the anatomy of scars, the fascia system, and then get into how scars can cause physical, neurological, and emotional restrictions. We'll talk a little bit about why and how we release the scars with the dolphin, and then touch on some scar types and some of the top most negatively influencing scars, as well as some symptoms that can usually benefit from scar release therapy. Quick tip, if you are joining us live today and you have questions, please just drop them into the chat box, and then we'll cover all the questions at the end when we have some time for a quick Q&A. All right. So, what is scar release therapy? It is a innovative new therapy that is designed to reduce the negative effects that scars have on our bodies. The unique thing is that it applies DC microcurrent via the Dolphin NeuroStims, which are the devices that we use, which penetrates deep into the body to release the scar tissue and increase cellular metabolism, ATP, and protein synthesis. Um, with those three things, with releasing the scar tissue and increasing that cellular metabolism, typically we see a lot of different benefits just from doing that, which we'll kind of touch on later in the presentation too. It's a pretty non-invasive and painless treatment. Everything is over the skin, so it's not like anything is ever penetrating through the skin. Like I said, pretty quick for the most part. I usually block out about 30 to 45 minutes per session, depending on the person and the scar type and all sorts of different things that can go into that as well. Um, it can provide incredible chronic pain relief throughout the body. So there's certain studies out there that showed an 82% success rate in significantly decreasing chronic pains, and another one showed a 73% success rate in significantly decreasing chronic pains. So what is the Dolphin NeuroStim? The unique thing about the Dolphin is that it applies DC versus AC. So DC is direct current. That's what our bodies already operate on. So you can think of them as that DC current as a more homeopathic type of current, where an alternating current would be more foreign or allopathic type of current. Typically, alternating current is what things in our household run on, like the refrigerator and microwave and all those types of things. They run on an AC current or alternating current. The secret with the Dolphin is that it applies 98 to 99% less voltage than any of the other devices that are out there. We always say it's like gently whispering to the body and resonating with our nervous system to really promote that deep cellular healing and pain recovery. Through studies, there's tons of different studies that they have done on the dolphins, but they have really found that it can gently relax muscles and calm the nervous system and release the scar tissues, which all in turn usually releases endorphins within the body, which is basically our natural painkillers. Scar release therapy is not the only thing that we do with the dolphins. There's many other modalities that we can do with these devices. We might use them in a bodywork session for pain and stress. We also can follow kind of a concussion and TBI recovery protocol with them. We also do vagal nerve stimulation with these devices too. So a little bit about the anatomy of scars here. I always refer to them as icebergs. What we see on the surface is only a fraction. Typically what's underneath is where we're really targeting with scar release therapy. So in the top left corner, you can see I've put three little pictures up there. On the way left side, it's going to show you a picture of healthy tissue. So you can see it's really red, really bright red. There's not really anything obstructing the pathways of, say, that nerve or the lymph fluid or anything that's running through that tissue. Um, it's very hydrated, it's very oxygenated, and it also has a very low electrical charge. However, then we go throughout life and we get injured, whether that's a true injury or trauma or even a surgery, or we'll kind of touch on some other scar types as well and how those can form later in the presentation. But point is, we get injured somehow. And then the body repairs that injury by building scar tissue. And you can see in that scar tissue at that microscopic level, it would be very, very difficult for anything to run through that, whether it's a nerve communication or lymph or circulation or energy. Any of that would be very difficult to run through that scarred tissue. When we have scars, obviously, yes, it does impair circulation, lymph flow, and another important point is that it then develops a high electrical charge. So a little bit on the intro to the fascia system. You'll hear me refer to the fascia quite a lot, probably. This is basically a connective tissue that is surrounding every single muscle, every single bone, nerve, and organ that we have. It spans literally from the top of our heads to the bottom of our feet, tips of our toes and fingers. It's everywhere. It is providing structural alignment for us and support. It's providing some flexibility and movement and overall health. Another really important thing is that it is very highly neurologically connected. So I always refer to it, especially when I'm talking to clients, as a body-wide brain. You can think of it. So it's this connective tissue that is a huge body-wide communicator, literally our brain to body connection. Fascial restrictions can happen. Obviously, that would be a restriction within that connective tissue. We typically refer to these as muscle knots. They may happen due to injury or stress, inflammation, repeated movement, posture, scars, all of those types of things. And in turn, when we have that restriction within the fascia, that can cause many things, but mainly pain, reduced mobility, emotional entrapment, and a lot of neurological dysfunction as well. So here's just a quick picture of fascia, because usually people are like, okay, what the heck? I've never heard of fascia. Why is this not in my anatomy book? And that's because for the longest time, it was very much just kind of ignored and discarded, especially in dissections. And fascia in an alive human versus a human that might be being dissected is very different. So there wasn't a lot of studies done on the fascia until recently. So fascia is the connective tissue that you see kind of in that image it looks like almost like a spider web type material. It's that webby, it's very jelly when it's hydrated and whatnot. It's almost like a gel, you can think of it. So you can see it's spanning in between certain bundles of muscle fibers there in that left-hand picture. Then on the right-hand picture, we get a really good depiction of what it looks like throughout the whole body. So there's different areas in the body where fascia might be more concentrated or thicker or all those types of things. But regardless, it is still spanning from the top of our head to the bottoms of our toes. And there you can see a good depiction too of somebody having actual fascial restrictions. They have one up on the shoulder and then one by the knee. And you can see that that tension from that restriction doesn't just stay in that shoulder. It is putting tension all throughout those lines that might be leading through the abdomen, or from the knee, it might be leading all the way up into the hip. So this proves that we can have a fascial restriction in one place but then have pain in another place or globally or all throughout the body, in fact. So here is a little video. I'm going to try to play this for you guys here quick that just gives us a really good idea or depiction of a literal fascial restriction. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a play here.
Cody is Monsieur Fascia, okay? And I'm going to torture him and give him all sorts of fascial restrictions. Now, before I do, Cody's fascia suit is healthy. And notice the cobwebs, right? They're doing well, right? So he can lift his arms, he can move, he can go hike, he can go play tennis, he can do it, he can tie his shoes, no pain, okay? No problem. I'm about to change that. So I'm gonna give Cody a myofascial restriction at his right rib cage and armpit. And if you can already see, he's already having to adapt a little bit against this. Good. So now, Cody, go ahead and try to lift both arms up for me. And we're gonna just, woo, good. Okay, so can you see that his range of motion is restricted right now? Really try to lift them up higher, Cody. Okay? Now, drop them back down because, ow, that's not fun. Now, this makes sense, right? You can imagine how this is going to create this restriction. Did you notice what happened at his left shoulder over here? Uh-huh, yeah? So go ahead, lift both of them again. A fascial restriction here is causing some serious range of motion issues over here. Now let's drop that down, and I'm going to give him a fascial release and fix him up, and now, woohoo, yeah. Did you notice him kind of move his neck? That is not comfortable in the neck either.
Okay, so you can see that um, fascial restrictions have a lot of influence throughout the body. So, as scars, relating this back to scars, as scars form, they use the nearby fascia tissue and other soft tissues to build back and close up the wound. And that leads to that fascial restriction that we just saw in the video. I always say, remember the iceberg effect. What we see is not it. It's body wide. So physically, scars can cause, of course, a loss of range of motion, less ease of movement, pain and numbness, and impair the lymph and circulation movement. In the picture on the left side there, I've kind of magnified what this would look like, what scar tissue would look like at a very microscopic level. So you can see there that through the red and the blue vessels there, that's symbolizing circulation movement. The green would be symbolizing lymph movement, and then the orange right down the middle would be symbolizing electrical current, or you can think of it as energy or electricity moving throughout the body through acupuncture meridians. So when we have a scar, obviously that impairs all of those three things. That impairs the circulation, it impairs lymph, and it definitely impairs the energetics within the body. So we'll get into a little bit more about the energetics later with emotions too. But aside from just physical restriction, we can also have neurological restriction from scars. And that is because we get a huge increase in the voltage of the tissue. So your normal skin tissue sits at about 80 millivolts. Once we finish building the scar, once that scar tissue is fully formed, it actually raises by about 20 times. It jumps all the way up to 1.6 volts, which is a lot. This essentially triggers a sympathetic stress response within the nervous system. And our sympathetic mode is our fight or flight mode in the nervous system. And through that, we can have body wide dysfunction just from that sympathetic fight or flight mode being constantly activated. This happens because scars will inhibit the vagus nerve from working properly. If you haven't done a little bit of research on the vagus nerve and what it is all responsible for, you definitely should. It's a huge topic right now because deservingly it should be, but because it does control a lot of our autonomic functions that happen within our body. So, speaking of autonomic, within the nervous system, we have this section of nervous system, you can think of it as the autonomic nervous system. This is what controls automatic things that happen in our body that we don't typically have to really think about to do. Um, so in that nervous system, we have two different branches. One would be, or divisions, one would be the parasympathetic division, and then one is going to be the sympathetic division. Sympathetic being that fight or flight mode. This, when our nervous systems enter into this mode, certain things like our heart rate will increase, our pupils will dilate, we completely stop digesting any food. Cognitive function is typically decreased. Immune system not worried about fighting any disease or virus or disorder within the body at all. We completely lose with that low immune system. We kind of completely lose the ability to detox and relax and all of those things that are nice to do. Um, However, we have a vagus nerve, and once that vagus nerve is activated, you can think of it as, then all of those things basically switch and flip flop. So then we enter into parasympathetic mode. In this mode, our heart rate will slow down. We start digesting our food. Our reproductive system gets some blood flow back to it. All of those types of things that we th- don't really think about, but should be happening in our body at all times, or at least probably 80% of the day, can then happen. So, neurologically, scars can cause, in the long run, via inhibiting the vagus nerve, scars can cause a loss in digestion, a loss in cognitive function. So, you might experience like repeated brain fog or um, whatever that might be for you, too. It might even be um, you're not able to focus as easy or as much as you used to, things like that. A decrease in your immune system, so you'll probably lose some immunity if you're stuck in that uh, sympathetic mode of the nervous system. You'll lose absolutely the ability to relax, and your heart rate variable will likely decrease. I put that picture on the left hand side of what typically would cause our nervous systems to go into sympathetic mode is us running from a hungry bear. Nowadays, it doesn't even take a hungry bear. Typically, we are stressed just from entering the workplace or whatever it might be. Um, so, of course, us being constantly in that sympathetic mode, we think we're being chased by a bear when, all in reality, we are not, and we don't need to be in that sympathetic mode. We might just have a scar. Okay. So, next we'll talk a little bit here about how scars can cause emotional restrictions as well. So, for a very long time, it was just kind of this thing that we just knew of, but we never really had like this logical or like very scientific explanation to how the body holds emotion. We have always said this: the body holds emotion, the body remembers what the mind doesn't want to, all of those types of things. We hear that a lot. However, we now know that there is physical area that the body can legitimately hold emotion. A lot of that happens in the fascial restrictions. So, in the fascia system. So, on the right hand side there, you'll see a picture of two different nerves or nerve cells, I should say, that should be responding to each other. That's how we get a full phase of, say, an emotion. So we get a nerve impulse that's coming in from that left side, and then that shoots out neurotransmitters, and it should be accepted by the next communicating nerve. That's how, again, we get this whole phase or series of an emotion. However, if we have a restriction within that gap, that's called the synaptic gap, where that neurotransmitter has to travel from one communicating nerve over to the next and be accepted by the next before we can process that full emotion. If we have a restriction, though, or a blockage within that synaptic gap, obviously that's going to impair how those neurotransmitters are accepted by the next communicating nerve, if they're accepted at all. If there is a significant scarring or restriction throughout that synaptic gap, is it possible that the neurotransmitters are completely disabled from connecting to the next communicating nerve? It could be. So yes, through the fascial restrictions, we can hold on to emotion. And sometimes you'll notice that when we do scar release therapy, people can have an emotional release, meaning that we release that restriction and then those neurotransmitters are able to be accepted, and maybe they finish up the phase or realization of that emotion. Sometimes the person doesn't even know what that emotion's about, and that's totally fine. It's just the body trying to process exactly what it was going through or is going through. So here's a little bit about how we perform scar release therapy. Scars, again, the electrical disruption is a very big one. That's why we've kind of chosen the dolphins to use. You can see that, again, scar tissue raises its electrical voltage. So in that top picture, they've basically depicted that normal skin tissue, we have a very negative or low current, and then the scar tissue would be more positive. So we want to reverse that so that we can get those restrictions of physical, neurological, and emotional restrictions released. So for that, we use two different polarities via two of the Dolphin devices. We have one that sits on a constant negative polarity, and then one that sits on a biphasic polarity, meaning it's bouncing back and forth from positive to negative. So then we'll apply each of those units on either side of the scar. And once we do that, it basically administers like a game of catch with electrons. So we're getting an active current through the scar tissue. That active current is what is physically breaking down the scar, but we're also, because we're using a DC current, we're also repolarizing that scar tissue. So we're bringing it back down to that 80 millivolts. So physically, yes, we're breaking down and reducing the scar tissue in size. We're softening up that tissue. Neurologically, we are reconnecting the fascia by repolarizing the tissue. And through those two things combined, we can help the body process some suppressed emotion as well. So, why we use the dolphin is because it is, again, probably the most studied scar release therapy type out there. You can see here in this chart, it's compared to a few other techniques that are out there that you can do for scar work. That includes cupping, manual therapies, and even dry needling. In all of these cases, the published studies increase in heart rate variable, exercise tolerance, reducing trigger point tenderness, proven scar reduction, and adverse responses. It's winning. You can see that these are obvious reasons that we have chosen the Dolphin Neurostim. And here is a couple more just quick evidence-based statistics that are out there about the Dolphin Neurostim and why we've chosen it. You can see the big one there is general health has an over 100% increase. Who doesn't need more of that? And quality of life, that's a 93.2% increase. That's awesome. So those are big reasons, and vagal tone's another big one. These are big reasons why we have chosen the Dolphin Neurostim versus other techniques out there. So a little bit on scar types. I always tell people scars don't have to just come from surgeries or injuries. We can have scars in different cases as well. It could be like on the right hand side, an internal scar. You might hear that somebody goes in for, say, a gallbladder surgery or removal or whatever it might be, and surgeon may say that it was adhesed to another organ or visceral tissue. Um, that can happen again for many reasons, but things can just kind of be compact in our visceral area, and our organs can legitimately get adhered or stuck together through scar tissue. And where they should be moving over each other and by each other very nicely, we get that kind of scar tissue buildup there too. Contracture scars are another one that's extremely tight skin that is resisting ability to move. We have keloid and hypertrophic scars too. Um, Other ones that aren't on here, but are just kind of also there, we also consider them scars, would be like tattoos, moles can even be another type. Portal wine stains, sometimes birthmarks are considered scars as well, especially because of their difference in electrical charge. They can be considered scars as well. So, of course, yes, scars can also happen from surgeries. These are what they kind of categorize as the most negatively influencing scar types. That's typically because these scars are running through areas that have a lot of, say, lymph fluid movement, circulation movement, or even energetic movement throughout the body, too. So, that would be things like an appendectomy, a C-section, really anything across the abdomen, gallbladder, breast scars, mastectomy, hernia. Those are all really negatively influencing the abdomen, is obviously a highway of a lot of movement throughout the body. Um, Also, cosmetic scars can be another big one. So some symptoms that may benefit from scar release therapy are chronic pain and chronic inflammation for sure, neuropathy, endometriosis symptoms, headaches, migraines, poor immunity, stress, anxiety, brain fog, digestive issues, and low vagal tone. I always just say if you have a scar, it probably needs to be released. And if you have any symptoms that have any sort of link at all to fascial restriction, it is very likely that you will notice at least some degree of benefit from scar release therapy. So, like I said, this is where I usually start a lot of my clients. If they come in and they say, I have this symptom and I struggle with this and whatever it might be for them. But they've tried massage and they've tried chiropractic and they've tried whatever it might be for them, stretching at home and exercises and physical therapy. And it's just that they haven't felt 100% back to their normal self, either after surgery or injury or whatever it might be, or maybe nothing of that even happened. Maybe they don't even know that they have a scar. But if they do know that they've had a scarred area, that is where I always will start them is with scar release therapy because I can do all the work that I want to on your sore shoulder. However, if you have scar tissue on either the other shoulder or that shoulder or in the vicinity, it's very unlikely that we will get you back to that optimal state that you're wanting without releasing that scar. So
Tony
real
Gregg
quick
with
here,
Hastings
I have a quick
had
testimony
a brain
from one
tumor
of my
scar tissue on the back of
clients
my
who
neck,
did
and
a
she's done
series
4 or
of
5
scar release
treatments
therapy with
and
me. We'll kind of,
cannot
let's see
believe
if
how
this will
much
play for
better
me.
it feels. It's been almost 2 years and almost back to normal. Tony Gregg with Hastings had a brain tumor scar tissue on the back of my neck, and she's done 4 or 5 treatments and cannot believe how much better it feels. It's been
Okay, so
almost 2
yes,
years and
Tony, like
almost
he
back
said,
to
had
normal.
a
Tony
surgery
Gregg
within
with
the cranium
Hastings
to
had a
remove
brain
a
tumor
tumor.
scar tissue on the back of my
Obviously, that
neck,
left
and
pretty
she's done
significant
4 or
scar
5
tissue in
treatments
that
and
area, and
could
he had
not believe
done.
how much
I think he
better
shared
it
with me that
feels.
he's
It's
tried,
been
massage
almost
and
2
even
years and
craniosacral therapy for kind of that
almost
neck
back
and
to
head
normal.
tension, maybe even some of
Tony
those
Gregg with
tension headaches
Hastings
types things.
had a
Um,
brain tumor
but
scar
nothing
tissue on
has
the
really
back of my
gotten
neck,
all
and
the way
she's
back
done 4
to
or
where he
5
would like to
treatments
be.
and
So we did some
cannot
scar
believe
release
how much
therapy.
better it
In the
feels.
end, I
It's
think we
been almost
probably
2
did
years and
somewhere around 5 to 7
almost back to
sessions with
normal.
him.
Tony Gregg with
And
Hastings
then just kind of maintenance
had a
sessions from there
brain
on out. So
tumor
once
scar tissue
he
on the
started
back of
maybe
my
feeling a
neck,
little bit
and
of
she's
tension
done
again,
4 or
he would
5
pop back
treatments
in and
and
kind of stay on that as needed
cannot believe how
basis.
much
But
better
like
it
he said, he
feels.
noticed
It's
a ton of
been
improvement. We
almost 2
noticed things
years and
like range of motion, of course,
almost
less
back to
tension,
normal.
and
Tony
things like
Gregg with
that. So
Hastings
he had a great result. Here is a couple pictures too of a before and after. I don't always promote that scar release therapy will have a cosmetic benefit, meaning that you don't always see the benefit, but in some cases you definitely do. Like in this one, this is on a post surgical hip replacement scar. And you can see in the second image there, I have kind of arrowed out or pointed out, you can literally see the pulled skin and fascia and muscle tissue. And then after that scar release, you can see all of that freeze up. So he's got more freedom in movement and emotion and mobility and all of those types of things. Here's just a couple other images on a knee. And then this one would be on a C-section scar here too. So you can see pretty significant cosmetic benefit there. A lot of times, cosmetically, really what we're seeing is maybe a color difference if it's a hypertrophic scarf or it's coming like kind of out of the body. We might see it level out. We might see the opposite. So if it's concave into the body, if it's going into the body, it might level out and with kind of become flush with the rest of the tissue as well. So those are some things that we've noticed cosmetically. Of course, that's not necessarily what we're just shooting for. We're shooting more for um, those deeper benefits, say like the pain relief, or even preventing some of the impaired lymphatic flow or inflammation that can happen around that area, or especially energetic flow. That's a really important one too. So we do have some time here for a Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording, but then we'll have some time here for those that are joining us live to go through those questions and answer any of those that you may have.